it to warm up. Fading you in, Chris, and you are good to go.
We're live. Hey everyone, welcome back to This Week at Work. It's Friday. Super excited for today's live show. Welcome to the new studio, by the way, if you haven't seen it.
Shane, if you can give me a heads up.
Today we're going to be talking about what generative AI means for work. Obviously, I can't talk about it on my own, so I had to bring in the experts. As always, I'm joined by my co-host and partner in crime, Matt Burns. How you doing, Matt? And then also we brought in the big guns for this show. Christopher Lind, Chief Learning Officer. Wow. The big guns, yeah. Christopher Lind, Chief Learning Officer at ChenMed and host of the Learning Tech Talk podcast. How are you doing, my friends? Nice to see you all.
I'm doing well. I don't know, big guns or big opinions. I have big opinions, so maybe that counts.
Are you trying to protect yourself right now? It's like,
something like that.
Let me process it up front and say, yeah. Also, I called you two guns. I said the big guns. Like you've got two guns.
That's right. Watch out.
Yeah, you're
Careful.
ready. But where do we even want to start? First of all, how have you both been? Because we haven't been together, us three, in ages. And maybe that's saying something that we don't like each other. I don't know.
No, I don't think that's it. I think we're all very busy. All three of us are very busy. So I was excited for the opportunity for all three of us to get back together again on this one.
Yeah, it's been a while, right? I think it's probably maybe like a year or two since we last jumped on. Was it really been? Chris has had two kids since then. Christopher's had two kids since we last spoke, probably.
I know. Well, yeah, and we'll see. Maybe by next time there'll be, 4 more. I have no idea. We'll just keep counting.
I think what you're secretly doing is like you want to build your own production studio. So you've got camera operators covered. You've got editors.
That's just it. It's called talent mobility. It's called talent mobility is what it is.
You're going to have your own talent marketplace at home. That's going to be amazing.
Yeah, that's right. I know. I'm in talks with a few tech companies.
LinkedIn had at least 9 likes on them.
Yeah. I know. That's right. They're building their own account. It's all good stuff so that I'm ready for the next, few years.
It's actually genius as well, because when you like share something on LinkedIn, you've got so many people to repost it as well. It's algorithm's going to love
video editors, everything. I'm teaching them all the good stuff.
Well, look, I'm going to come to you first then, Christopher. What does generative AI mean for work? We should start with what is generative AI. Let's just start there before we talk about
I was going to say, because it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people.
And I hear that as well. So what does it mean to you, Christopher?
Yeah, so when I think about it, I'm thinking about it much more broadly than I think the conversation that's happening for a lot of folks. Like ChatGPT hit 100 million users in like 2 weeks. And so when most people think generative AI, they're thinking that cool robot that you can ask to make funny stories or write your LinkedIn posts. And they're like, that's generative AI. I'm actually thinking about it much broader than that in terms of any of the advanced AIs that are in the background creating things from natural language, which you start thinking about it that way, the applications go really wide, really quick.
Mm-hmm. Give us some examples of some of those applications.
I mean, well, how far do you want to go? Because we've only got 45 minutes type of a thing. But I mean, you're starting to see this branch out a little bit, because even if you look at like image generators and things like that, you ask for something and it creates. Mm-hmm. But that's then, starting to advance into the extended reality space, because you can start to use it to create 3D realms. You can start to use it for human interaction between people. You're going to start to see it on the back end of, platforms like meeting platforms, analyzing the conversations and providing feedback. It's expanding really quick.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Matt, the man that does the 3D? Matt was the first one to bring us 3D events in virtual reality. What does that mean for that space, Matt?
It is exponential.
Matt, we're hearing you, by the way, through your headphones mic, not your normal mic, just because I know you.
You can sound like you're in a fishbowl. It's fine.
Yeah. I know Matt would kill me if I didn't tell him right now. We're hearing you through your headphones.
I know, for the whole episode was done, and then he's like, "Are you serious?" I sounded like that the entire time.
Yeah.
The entire time.
Now you sound great.
Look at that.
You sound great now. I know he would kill me if I didn't tell him.
Now I sound Yeah, it's now I'm in stereo.
Do you know what's funny? Now,
I mean,
now you sound like you know what you're talking about. That's how much the mic helps. It's great.
Before I was like, who is this? I don't think he has anything to say. Now, like, oh.
Yeah. Ooh, let's all
what I
go
enjoy
on.
is that we talked about 15 minutes before the broadcast and nobody mentioned it then, but they mentioned it now. That
It wasn't doing
broadcast.
it.
No, Matt, it wasn't doing it
before.
It wasn't. It only
No.
we went live, and your AI on your computer said, "I'm going to sabotage your head of your."
That's
your
right. Your
microphone."
generative AI bot just took over.
Yeah, it is sentient over here in Canada, so we be careful about it. I think it's to your point, Chris. It's exponential across all these industries. And when we think about live events, that's a very small niche case. But I think more about the implications for work. We've been talking about automation and AI and the future of work for as long as I've been in the HR industry. And I think about roles that are predominantly administrative, bookkeepers, accounts payable, HR coordinators, recruiting coordinators, where most of their work is transferring information back and forth. Look at tools like this. It's going to completely transform how we do essentially everything in support roles and organizations. So I get excited about all the different use cases. Events, absolutely. There's some cool stuff happening there. It's going to make our day-to-day lives easier as consumers. But I think where the real rubber hits the road is for work.
Yeah. When you said,
I don't know. I think we're gonna see it. I think we're gonna see it flare up on the personal front as well as work as it starts to tap into other things. I think the initial one, you know, kind of some of the early stage stuff. But to your point, I think we're gonna see dramatic impact when it comes to work because there is so much of this stuff that is administrative and robotic that most of the time people don't even realize it is.
I'm wondering, because when you sent this over, Christopher, you had at the beginning, everyone can see this now watching. It says, "How fast is too fast?" Why did you add that part? Why did you add that part? You felt necessary to add that to the beginning.
I did because one of the things that I'm probably, well, I don't know. It's less of the conversation happening other than the tinfoil hat conversations where you're hearing, you know, post-apocalyptic, the world's going to end type of a thing. But in the middle, there are some real risks with this as you think about this is, I mean, if you haven't played with ChatGPT and asked it to do something for you, you should do it. And you'll be shocked at how quick it responds and how quickly it can do things. And I guess the concern that I raise with that is when you look at the stats around burnout, people are already feeling like I can barely keep my head above water. And, you know, you look at some of the stats from a long time ago, it was like, oh, technology is going to get us to the point we're not even going to need to work 40 hours a week. You know, we're going to make ourselves so much more efficient. It's going to be so much great. And all we've done is just speed up what's expected. The pace of work is faster and we're expecting things faster. And you can't even take 5 minutes when somebody texts you before you have to respond back because, oh gosh, the company's going to go under if you don't. And this is just going to add a new layer of speed that has the possibility to create greater efficiency, but it also has the potential to create a ton of anxiety for people where things that, hey, let's take some time and get this done and let's think about it first. It's going to be like, no, we got to get it done by 10 minutes from now because, and just,
yeah, I see what you're saying.
That's a real risk. It's a real risk. And we run the risk of running so fast, we don't even realize we're scorching the earth around us and not even realizing it until we turn around and go, oh, oops. And we've done this through human history. I mean, go back as far as you want. We continue to repeat this cycle. And the risk is real.
Sad thing is we're doing it to ourselves too. Like to your point, the technology was meant to be this, okay, we're going to free ourselves up, you know, the self-actualization, move up that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, as it were. And yet we still have leaders insisting upon people being in the office 5 days a week. So it's like we have the tools, we have the flexibility, we have the empowerment to do things differently and to increase our output, yet we can't get out of our own way. And I think, you know, to your point, Chris, I get worried about this expectation where now the tools won't mean extra efficiency. It just increases higher expectations. So now things that would have taken 4 to 6 weeks now take 4 to 6 hours. And there's something to be said for productivity versus activity. And this is something I've been talking about a lot on this podcast, which is, yeah, you can be very, very busy, but sometimes things need a minute just to like sit with them, think, reflect, consider the impact of stakeholders. You can produce a lot of information, a lot of activity, but what's the true impacts of that? AI, while very effective, has a very narrow frame of reference and doesn't consider the things that affect human beings, doesn't have, at least as far as we know, sentient capabilities, is not considering the impact to your workforce and engagement. And to Chris's point, it creates as many problems as it solves. So that's where I think it's an important topic. How fast is too fast?
And I think if you look at how work gets done in a lot of organizations now, one of the core problems is we don't take the time to put the thought into thinking around the corners and doing that, because there's this urgency behind everything. And AI in general only accelerates problems. So this is a problem in organizations today. So now you strap a jetpack with nitro boosters on it and go, let's see what happens. It's just going to accelerate it further. And I think AI should be opening up time for us to actually do more of that. I mean, that's the beauty of it, is if you use it right, it can take care of some of that administrative stuff that keeps us from spending time on this. But if you don't think carefully about it, you're going to be like, great. To Matt's point, think how much more crap we can churn out now. Well, is that really a problem in organizations, generating useless stuff? Like, no, it's not.
I'm wondering, like, how have you seen companies dealing with this internally? Because this is going to exist in different silos. People are going to be using it in different ways. How do we police this? I don't want to use that word, but like, it's going to become a nightmare for organizations.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that. And this was the spirited part of the dialogue that Matt and I had in the pre-show on this, was, what do you really do about it? Because I'll use my father of 7 analogy. The toothpaste is out of the tube. So to try and say, oh, well, and we're seeing this now. You read news articles about, companies going, oh my gosh, our IP is being put into these random big, large language models without any
sort of
the
music industry.
It's extremely hard to control.
You saw the music industry. There was like mixes with Drake and other artists, and there were actually people making money off of it, and it wasn't even them. It was like AI songs. So now all of the different governing bodies around music are like panicking, like, where are all these royalties going? Because they're not going to us. And you don't even know the difference between real and fake anymore. It's hard to even. Yeah, it's really hard to differentiate what's real. Even
and I think
go for it. I was gonna say even
I was just gonna
go. We've got a delay here, so you go, because otherwise we're gonna be here forever.
Okay.
Go.
Well, no, I forgot now. So you go. I'll remember.
No, I've even seeing friends. Even my wife Natasha, she won't mind me saying this, that she thought she was talking to a human being online the other day about buying some products that she was on about, and she had bought it, and she was like, "Oh, I got this amazing deal." And then I looked through, I was like, you were talking to AI. And she was like, no, I wasn't. I was like, let me show you. And she was like, oh my God, I thought I was having a conversation, Chris, with a human being. And AI upsold her. It even upsold her the product. And it just made me laugh so much that she had no idea that she was chatting to AI the entire time. And I was like, and that wasn't even that advanced. It was pretty simple. Anyways, it's just...
Well, what Chris was going to say, because I was one half of that conversation, is what we talked about was toothpaste out of the tube, and props for the dad joke. I appreciate the reference there. But I think more importantly, I was at a conference a couple of days ago in Vancouver. We were talking about a number of things. ChatGPT was part of every session, whether it was DEI, talent, compensation, every conversation. And I was talking to somebody outside in the hallway who said, the first thing their CEO came up to them and said is, we have this big problem. We have a huge, massive problem. We need a policy. And like, that's the reactions. We need to put some containers around this. We need to control it. And to Chris's point, the toothpaste is out of the tube. And the reality is it's happening. And early adopters are already using the technology to create performance reviews, to write job descriptions, interview questions. Mm-hmm. It's happening today already. So I think one thing I appreciate about organizations, and I think Chris's company is one of them, is rather than police it, let's empower people to use it effectively. Let's give them the skills to be able to differentiate right from wrong and what is appropriate use of the tool versus just simply saying, thou shalt not use it. It's not realistic. It's not actually going to be applied. And I think it's important to understand that the tool can have significant benefit, but to be mindful of the impacts of how it can be used, maybe not for the best purposes.
Well, and I think that's just it is, if you were a company in the 2000s and you said this internet thing, I don't know, it's a little bit scary.
Yeah.
Let's not use the internet.
You're kind of out of business.
You probably don't exist anymore. I mean, let's just be honest. And I think it's a similar thing where there's a lot that we're going to have to do. And I think where it's going to go beyond what we have in the past is we're going to need to upskill not only decision makers on how to make decisions about this and how to manage this well, but also the general population needs to raise the bar in terms of their understanding. Even in the example of, the example you gave with your wife, it's one of those like ethical, like, how do I feel about being upsold by a bot type of a thing? And I think we're going to get to a point where it's more comfortable. But I mean, there's apps now, you can build relationships with a fake human and it's like, okay, what if it takes you down a rabbit hole? And then if you do something crazy, is the bot responsible? I mean, it just gets really meta really quick when you start thinking about this. And I think the way you get around it is you just help people understand it, because people are going to use it for nefarious purposes.
Yeah.
They're going to.
Oh, I saw, not to go too negative, but I saw on the news last night, there's this new like scam of they only need a certain amount. If you've ever posted a video of you talking online, they can recreate your voice. So there's this new scam now where parents are getting phone calls from supposedly their children saying they've been kidnapped and asking for ransom money, and it sounds exactly like that person, because they only need a certain amount of words to recreate your voice. And that's just terrifying. Yeah. And I saw an example. They was interviewing all of these parents. They're like, literally sounded exactly like my son, my daughter. It's terrifying. So we're gonna have to do something.
Well, and that's just it. And that's the thing. Like I have an AI version of my voice. You're not talking to it right now, but I do. I've trained.
Oh, so you already have that already?
AI version of.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
I have an AI version, and I can turn text into speech, and it sounds very similar to me. But if you actually were to, you'd have to know my mannerisms. You'd be like, this doesn't sound like I'm talking to Christopher. But again, it's one of these things where how do we help people understand that this stuff is real so that they can be more aware of it? I think that's one of the things is why we need to upskill the masses on this, and can't just go, well, let's just hope people figure it out for work. It's like, no, this is going to start affecting everything in your life, so you do need to be aware of it so you're not blindsided by something like that.
So let me ask this question, Christopher, because I think it's a worthwhile conversation. When we talk about the applications for work, we've discussed things like performance reviews, where I come from a world, as we all do, where it was the bad actors of the management realm would copy and paste previous year's performance reviews, change the date, here's your next year's performance review, congratulations, save some time. Like, we've all been down that path. Or fabricating results on engagement surveys, all in the spirit of saving time to be more effective. I'm curious about your thoughts about this. Tools like ChatGPT, does it incent more bad actors, or does it just give bad actors a different tool to leverage?
So this ties back to, I would say it depends on, in your organization, whether you have accountability structures in place. And I think this is the opportunity that every organization needs to look at. Because if you have the accountability structures in place, then I don't think it's going to incent more bad actors. Because if you're actually held accountable for things, you're probably not going to want to test the waters because you don't want to get caught, type of a thing. So going to the manager performance review thing, if you're actually held accountable for team engagement and 360s, and you have things in place that are actually getting dynamic feedback on, is my leader a total jackwagon, or is he actually a compassionate, human-centric leader? You're probably not going to go, hey, ChatGPT, just like write my performance reviews and I'll just hit submit and call it a day. But if you have zero accountability in place and you can do more of this and go, oh, the system lets me just say, write a nice performance review, ask me 5 questions and writes a dynamic response. Yeah, you're going to get more people going, I mean, I'll try this and maybe nobody will ever notice, type of a thing. So I think that's where you have to get in front of it and think about, well, is it going to make it easier for people to make bad decisions? Yes, it is. So what are you doing to make sure people are accountable for making the right decisions?
Yeah, and I think I also would add is, again, we go back to empowering people to use the tools effectively. So there is a use case for ChatGPT for performance reviews. And, we, all three of us, this is what happens when 3 podcast hosts, by the way, hop on a show, is we all talk over each other. And I'm
enjoying being quiet for once. I'm like, this is great.
we all create content. So all of us create content, video, audio, text-based content. And because we all enjoy sharing our thoughts with audiences and, connecting knowledge and connecting problem to solution. And the reality is, because we're thinking and ideating so much, sometimes like writer's block is real. Sometimes you need a bit of a helping hand to get the creative juices flowing. And because in this world that we live in, we're switching between activities. Chris is caring for 7 children. He's got his full-time job. He's got a podcast. He's got other things he's doing. Like Chris was other tasks, myself, we're all transitioning between multiple different activities. It's hard to just take a half day and just brainstorm and think about things. Like usually you have to write a post in 30 minutes because you have to go to the next meeting, and that meeting has something to do with completely different. So I love ChatGPT specifically for the ability to start the creative process, to get things rolling, and then take that raw product and refine it and make it sound like me in terms of its voice and its iteration, and add more value to it. Yeah. So I think in the context of performance reviews or job, interview questions or job descriptions, use those tools to start the process, reducing the time to complete them, but then add that human element at the end to refine it, to give it that extra level of quality. That to me is a completely acceptable use case for ChatGPT. It's when people remove the human element altogether and rely solely on the technology, that's where it becomes disingenuous. That's where there's an integrity issue. And that's where you get the major issues where it's, maybe not inclusive tone, or maybe it's not the most, thoughtful responses. So I think it's about pairing our own humanity with the technology to get the best result.
Well, and on that one, when it comes, so we're just using performance reviews. It's probably one of the 9,000 things that are going to start sparking up in companies. But honestly, when you really think about performance reviews, I don't think in my entire career I've cared what my boss wrote in the system. I mean, it's good. It's good to have more information. So from a reporting standpoint, you can start to see. But at the end of the day, to your point on the humanity of it, I care about the conversation with my boss. Like that's what I care about. Are we having regular conversations? And then when you deliver the feedback on how I landed, are we having a dialogue about how we got there and why and what I can do to continue progressing? I'm not like, let me read what you wrote in Workday. Oh, I don't know if how I feel about that. Can you edit that comment? And so again, it's one of those like, well, where is the important part versus not? Now, if you have a leader who never talks to you, then you probably care a lot more about what's written. And I think this is but that's a problem you need to fix, not just go, well, get rid of ChatGPT, because I bet if we make people write it, it'll be better. Like, nope. Then they're going to copy and paste it.
What does this mean for learning itself, right? Because we had to learn the hard way in our generation. We had to do.
We're gonna learn it the hard way.
We had to do the research. We had to take time. We had to, like now when I was looking the other day because we were doing a global diversity and inclusion summit. So I just put in ChatGPT, what are the top 10 D&I trends for 2023, just to give me an overview. And then I was like, normally I would have taken like a couple of days to do the research that I just got in here, and it kind of like, I feel like it's almost robbing people of the journey of learning, if that makes any sense. Because like on that journey of failing and learning and making mistakes, that's where you grow, develop, you build that muscle. Now it just serves it to you, so you don't even have to do the hard work. Does that make sense? So I kind of think like, how's that going to shape the future of learning itself and how we learn? That must be, obviously, you're a chief learning officer, Christopher.
So there's two ways, right? We're at a precipice right now. We really are, because your example, even right there, I mean, first of all, going back to your original question, it's going to take some lawsuits and some really bad mistakes, and we're going to see them. They're going to start popping up. Somebody's going to use ChatGPT wrong. Somebody's going to apply AI wrong. They're going to get their pantsuit off, and we're going to go, oops, we never thought about this type of a thing. But going to the like individual learning piece, this is a real risk. And I did a whole thing on YouTube about this, of ChatGPT can make you dumber.
That's what I mean. Yeah, exactly. That's the best way of saying
dumber.
It. Yeah, it's true.
Because it can make you not think critically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You can be like, well, why would I think critically? I'm just going to ask this thing to tell me how to think, and then I'm just going to go off of it.
That's what I mean.
Which if we want an actual example of this, look what GPS did to people. I mean, I know people who couldn't get to the gas station down the street without Waze because they'd be like, I don't know where I am right now,
true.
type of a thing.
Yeah.
And that's where it could go with ChatGPT is people could literally go, I don't know what to think. Let me ask ChatGPT what to think. But what I'm encouraged by, that's the bad route. But the good route is it can actually increase active learning and critical thinking if you use it right. And I think that's one of the things that as a learning leader, I'm really focused on. How do we actually use this for good? Because we can actually use it to help people think critically more if we actually use it right. So just as an example, a simple example, I run all of my transcripts through ChatGPT and I ask it for feedback. You know, what positions could I have taken differently? How might people have been confused? And it gives me that feedback that then challenges me to think differently. You know, as we start tapping into experiential learning, the example with your wife on the Amazon or whatever it was, having this interaction, that can become an actual dynamic experience, a simulation that you could do with employees to actually challenge them to think about, you know, how did I perform in this conversation? What things could I have done? Instead of watching passive content and going, you know, okay, I picked up a few new things. Well, no, we can actually put you in a situation where you can scale dynamic learning. And that could actually increase people's critical thinking. We can expose people to situations that we wouldn't before and give them a chance to think critically, get feedback, reflect, and go through this. So scalable active learning, it's real, but we also could just make people
dumb,
brain dead if we wanted to. Yeah, I mean, we really could.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking as a student right now, it's just so tempting and easy just to take the easy route. You know, it's just so... in our day, you had no choice but to do the work, right? You know, but now it's like so tempting for them just to, hey, write me a paper on X. This many words.
Well,
you know, it's just
but
like...
I think the thing about it is, and this is where the dynamic of what do we mean by learning is going to change. Because in many regards, we've measured learning by activity instead of outcomes. And so it's been like, well,
that's true, yeah.
We know you learned because you spent 89 hours researching this paper.
And 3 years at university. That doesn't mean anything.
Was that really what we wanted, was to painfully make you go through the, you know, Dewey Decimal System and go find cards? And is that actually teaching you a valuable skill, or is the ability to distill this information and then represent it and, you know, that's actually an outcome? Well, if we can compress the wasted time and get more focused on the outcome, but that's a shift for learning leaders because we haven't historically measured outcomes. We've measured activity. How many things did people complete? How many minutes of the video did they watch? How many sessions did they participate in? Well, that doesn't really tell us anything.
Well, if you want to get really, you know, controversial, learning traditionally has been about memorization and recitation. Like it's been about, let's memorize information and recite it. Integration and application of the knowledge has not been measured, traditionally speaking. I mean, application could be, I guess, considered in terms of testing, but I think what we're looking for is how do we use information and apply it in our real world lives to make things better for us, people around us. And I think in that context, you know, AI has a similar effect as the internet. The internet provides us with a wealth of information at your fingertips. You type it into your chat, into your Google search, you know, bar or any other search bar you want to use, and then arrive at an answer, true or not. AI accelerates that and gives you access to information at a glance at your fingertips in real time. So in theory, access to knowledge actually is greater and more democratized, which is incredible because 20 years ago, knowledge was walled off. It was actually used as currency in organizations.
Yeah.
And Chris, we've had this conversation before. You know, people used to sell their white papers for tens of thousands of dollars and monetize their knowledge, whereas now it's all been democratized. So in that sense, it's amazing. And it actually raises the floor of collective knowledge. But the application of the knowledge, I think, is where we're talking about now is how do we actually apply it going forward so that people can actually reap the benefits of this incredible wealth of information we have at our fingertips?
It's so funny you say that.
Well, and a good example of this, we've seen, I mean, the past few years have been a good example of this, where because knowledge is so democratized, we assume that we're experts on everything. I mean, Chris, you Googled, you know, what are the top DEI trends? Well, the fact you were able to get that information in seconds, does that actually mean you deeply understand
No.
all of these trends
Exactly.
and actually know? No, but it can create a false sense of confidence in this. The Dunning-Kruger effect kicks in and go, well, let me tell you, I'm an expert on this now because I have the answers to this at my fingertips. It's like, you still don't know jack squat when it comes to actual application. And I think this is going to change the way companies even need to think about work. Because as you start thinking about work, it's like, well, what do you really want your people doing? Is it just showing up and regurgitating information, or, churning out nonsense? Or do you actually want your people thinking and making decisions and innovating? Well, I guess it depends on what your desired outcome is.
Yeah, I was already always really bad at that in school. I never really tested well in terms of memorizing it, but I was really good at implementing it.
Yeah.
So I always get really frustrated as a student. Like, I can do it. I can actually implement this learning, but if you ask me to put it on a sheet and I have to memorize exactly how it has to be written down, if that makes sense, I failed everything, literally. But I was very good at absorbing the knowledge and going and actually executing. And I think that's the biggest gap here right now. People, you have the information, but like, everyone knows how to lose weight. They've all watched a video, but have you actually gone out and executed the plan? Do you really understand it, right? It's very different. It's very different. And that's what me and Shane and the rest of the team here, we try and be focused our time and energy on, constantly just executing the learnings as opposed to just continuing to learn. I'd rather actually take a break sometimes and stop listening to podcasts, stop reading books, just to focus on executing what I've learned. Otherwise, you get kind of caught in this loop of just consumption, and you're not actually going out there and implementing anything whatsoever.
Yeah.
So I definitely think
that's because that's exactly what the Dunning-Kruger effect is. You think you know it, and then you go do it,
yeah.
and you go, oh, I actually don't know anything about this, because when it didn't go according to plan, I had no idea what to do, type of a thing. And it's like, that's where you actually learn, where you fail, and then you go, all right, well, now I got to figure out, how do I adjust?
Yeah. Ivan, have we got any questions in the chat? I was trying to get into LinkedIn and my phone decides to just stop working. What? Oh, did you mention? Can you hear it? Hear Ivan?
Someone in the chat mentioned about wearing a jetpack. You mentioned it early on. They love that.
I missed that bit. Okay. All right. No, he does. I don't think he does take a jetpack to work. Maybe. I don't know.
No, they're talking. Yeah. Well, no, I think, that's exactly what AI is doing. So actually, someday I do want to fly, but I don't have a jetpack at this point.
No. I think that's anything you want to add? I feel like we could go on forever talking about this topic. We should bring AI in as one of our guests from one of the shows. As that's what we should do.
So what's funny, well, what's funny is, though, we'd get a lot of word salads, right? Like, if you've ever played around with this stuff, you read it and you go, this is kind of like one of those LinkedIn posts that you read and you go, wow, they said a lot, but they didn't really say anything, type of a thing. And that's where kind of the phrase I use a lot is like, treat it like a really smart intern. It's good, it's capable, it can do lots of things, it's packed with information, but a little clunky, kind of like my 2-year-old, kind of wobbles around the house, and you're like, don't go too far, you're going to get yourself hurt.
I'm not sure what the labor laws are where you live, Chris, but 2 is a bit too young to be an intern.
Well, to be clear, I was not suggesting, he kind of interns, he keeps me occupied. He's my office accessory.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, listen.
I don't pay him, though. It's an unpaid internship in this house. You get to eat. That's how we pay for things.
Yeah, I think we're just seeing the beginning of this, right? And that for me, that's also what's even scarier. Is like, this is just the beginning. People have no idea. Like, I'll give people an example of something that I did recently. I didn't release it because I was like, this is insane. I asked ChatGPT to write me a script for a video. I then put that script into a video generator, which made the video for it, so the B-roll, and then I basically put the audio, the script, and the video into a generator where you have a human being now saying the script, and then it automatically published it to all the social media platforms. So I literally could create an incredible video every single day without doing and generate generate the thumbnail. And then I put in use this to generate a thumbnail. Boom, here's my thumbnail for it. So it is pretty
well, and I
incredible.
think when you think about that example, okay, and this is, I think, what we're going to see. If I were to look in the short term, I think what we're going to see, especially around the contents, and it's already starting, there's going to be just a ton of digital noise. And that's going to happen in work and outside of work, because everybody's going to be able to create this stuff. And as a result, you're going to end up with a lot of garbage.
I'm seeing it on LinkedIn already. There's a couple of creators that I follow. I'm not going to name and shame them on right now, but they're posting 3 or 4 things a day. And I can just tell. Like now, like because I use the platform a lot, I'm like, you're clearly just every single day writing in top trends, just top trend that, give me 5 things for this. And it's just boom, 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 boom. There's no thought behind it. You can tell each post has a different type of personality, because it's obviously just been generated. Like to Matt's point, you've got to make it your own still. It's got to sound and feel like Matt or Christopher. And I'm seeing it every day. And the worst part about it though is it's working for that person, for those people.
I know. I
see the numbers, I see the shares, I see the views, and I'm like, I'm like, oh, it's so tempting to go down that route, right? As a content creator, but you have to, I'm not gonna compromise my morals.
Well, and I think this goes back to, we all have a choice in this. Like, we can choose what to do with it, and you may get some short-term gains out of it, which again, even in organizations, as you're making decisions on this, you might be like, man, we do this, we get to the 50-yard line overnight. And it's like, right. But then what's the rest of that 50-yard line look like? Because if you've now dumbed down your workforce, or you've made work even more convoluted, or more, I don't really know what goes on because some black box does it for me. When something goes wrong, you have no recourse to do anything about it, versus if you take the time to do it right. Well, you're going to maybe not get to the 50-yard line overnight, but when things go south, you're still just going to keep moving forward. And I think that's where, the next few years are going to be an interesting one, to say the least. And I know even some of the AI leaders from back in the day are kind of going like, what did we do?
Because it's like overnight, right? You saw ChatGPT come out, and then Google released their version, and then Microsoft released their version. Now it's like it's
everywhere.
It's everywhere. You can't escape it now, as well. So I have no idea, Christopher, what this is going to look like when our kids are older. I'm thinking about Robin, 4 years old right now, and she has no idea. I was joking on our HR leader summit we did yesterday, that when Robin's older, she's probably going to think it's hilarious that work is a place she used to go to. Like, can you imagine her mind? What do you mean
you used to go to a thing?
What do you mean you had to travel? Everyone used to travel all to this one building so you could do your work. Like, it's gonna be laughable when they're older. And similar with AI, they're gonna be like, what do you mean you used to manually write out an email?
Right.
What do you mean you used to do 2 weeks?
I know.
Yeah, it's gonna be.
Well, and the thing is given the fact I have 7 kids, right? This is an area of conversation for me, because I'm like, you all are gonna grow up in this type of thing. But I think this is a takeaway every organization can think about, is one of the good things that generative AI and other advanced AIs can do, and this is something I do with my kids, is help them discover what actually makes them distinctly human. Like, what are those skills and talents that they have, so that they know where they can apply them and how they can use them. Because then it's like, well, AI, like, go ahead. Because once you figure that out, you're not really concerned about AI, because you're like, I don't care. I hate doing that part of my work anyway. I'll gladly have a bot take care of that for me, because this is actually what I'm really good at, and what I'm adding unique value to what I do. And so I see that with my kids. And going back to it, they kind of joke about it. They're like, haha, you used to write this type of a thing? And it was like, well, yeah, I still do write things myself. And they're like, oh, couldn't you just ask it to write it for you and then tweak it? I'm like, well, I could, type of a thing. But I think that's where we have to do that as organizations, because I would say by and large, most organizations have very little visibility into what their people can do. I think they know on a general level. They may have some aggregate data on what they think, but in terms of any sort of strategic blueprint on what can the people in our company do, and what are we trying to do, and how do we match those two, that's probably the biggest challenge every organization is trying to solve for right now.
Yeah. Well, we could have a whole nother show on that we'll save that for next time. as well. But it's always fun, and we never make it half an hour. How long have we been going, Ivan? We always go over time, but it's always fun as well. But Christopher, where can people check out you? Obviously, you've got an amazing podcast. You're doing a million things. Where can people follow you and make sure they can?
I'm on LinkedIn a lot. That's where most people end up finding me. But I've started doing a lot more stuff on YouTube now. Expanding my platforms, and then most people just message me on LinkedIn.
Give the podcast a plug. The name of the podcast, Learning Sharks, and
fine. All right, I do a lot. Well, you see, okay. So let me ask you: do you call yours a podcast or do you call it a live stream? Because mine's technically a live stream that goes to.
Oh, we're getting into this now. Well, I just call it a podcast, and then but I realized that it doesn't. I need to start explaining that to people because I get guests turning up and like, you didn't explain that it's video and cameras and live. I was like, okay, probably. So yeah, I do still call it a podcast, but if you look now, I would say 90% of all podcasts are also video now. Like people don't even tell.
Well, but just because it's video doesn't necessarily mean it's live, because live is like one take, which again I think distinguishes like
it's true.
Is this scripted? Is this all cut together?
All of yours are live.
Conversation?
Yeah, for everyone listening, all of yours are live, right, on LinkedIn, which is why you should follow Christopher on LinkedIn is the best way. But not everyone's comfortable, as you know, being live on LinkedIn.
Yes, I know.
I've had many HR leaders turn up and be like, "You didn't tell me this is what we're doing," as well. I've got better now at communicating that, but it's been hilarious. They're like, "I would have called the makeup artist Chris. I would have had the hairstylist here." My favorite thing is just terrifying the PR and comms teams. That's like a hobby for me.
I know. I know. The conversation is like, well, what are you going to say on the show?
Yeah.
I don't know. We're going to get into a discussion, and I promise I'm not going to say anything that's going to get anybody in trouble, but I can't tell you what's going to come out.
That's my favorite. They're just quivering in their boots like, oh my God. Anyways, it's good seeing you again. Matt, pleasure as always, as well. And we'll see you all next time, same time next week. And enjoy the weekend, everyone. See you later. Bye-bye.
All right. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye, all.
Comms are off. Good to go.